Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mr. Saucedo's YouTube videos. Today, we're going to be looking at the different types of relationships that organisms have with one another. And it's one of those 6 themes of bio that, organisms are all interconnected to one another. And so what we call a close ecological relationship between two organisms is we call that symbiosis or symbiosis. And so there are 3 main types of symbiosis. The first is mutualism, and that is where both organisms benefit from one another. And so you have this little shrimp, you have this eel, and it basically picks things out of the eel's mouth and out of its teeth that could get stuck there or become infected or get bacteria or something like that. And so that would be an example of mutualism. There are tons of examples of mutualism, and so we're going to kind of go through some of them together. So sea anemone and clownfish. Most people are aware that that is probably a mutualistic relationship. And so the sea anemone basically are protected homes for the clownfish. It says clownfish are the only fish not stung by an anemone. Now we know that clownfish actually do get stung by an anemone. It's just that the toxin doesn't affect them. So it still gets stung. It's just the toxin itself doesn't actually do anything to the clownfish. Clownfish act as guards. They chase away predators. They eat parasites that the sea anemone would get otherwise. And so they really do form a beneficial pairing. And so that's why it's a form of mutualism. Here's another crazy kind of looking one. We have acacia ants and acacia thorns. The thorns actually act as homes for the ants. And so you can see these little holes. Ants can go in there. The thorns also do provide them with nectar. And the nice thing is that acacia are basically have their built-in security force. Ants will attack any predator that comes near the thorns, including humans. They're very territorial, and so when they sense something nearby, even if it's just a jostling of a step, the acacia ants will go out and try to fend off anything that might destroy their home. So the acacia gets a benefit. The acacia ants get benefits. Here's another pretty interesting one that most people are kind of aware of to some degree. The oxpecker and the impala. So oxpeckers eat parasites. They're ticks that can cause all sorts of problems for impala, and oxpeckers eat them. They look for them specifically, and sometimes you'll see them riding on their back. This one's on the stomach, on the side of its head. They'll ride on their antlers. And the impalas are basically a free food source, and they're getting parasites eaten off of them. So they don't mind at all. Commensalism is a form of symbiosis where one organism benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. This gross little guy here, these are eyelash mites. They live off of your oil and dead skin and stuff on the follicle of your eyelashes. And so these little guys live there. Look at their cute little faces. These are eggs that they've laid, again, in the follicle of your eyelash. So what are some examples of commensalism? Well, barnacles and whales. Barnacles live a stationary life. They're stuck in one spot into adulthood, and they can't really go hunting or anything. So if they are lucky enough as a little baby to land on the surface of whale, they will undoubtedly latch on and stick there for life because they get crazy good food sources because the whale's swimming. So they can just filter things as the whale swims. The barnacles don't harm, nor do they help the whale. They're just there. They're just kind of stuck to them. Cattle egret and egret. Sorry, I don't know why I said cattle egret and egret. I meant cattle egret and cattle. There you go. So egrets are really kind of smart. They wait for packs of cattle to move. And as the cattle move and graze through the fields, grasshoppers and stuff move out of the way. And they just swoop in and pick up the bugs. The cattle aren't harmed by this at all. You just have a really smart bird that's kind of waiting for bugs to move out of the way of, a herd of cows. The negative one is obviously parasitism. And so parasitism is a form of symbiosis where one organism benefits and the other one is harmed. We have a hornworm caterpillar and the braconid wasp. So braconid wasp inject their eggs into the hornworm caterpillar. And so when the eggs hatch, the little larvae start eating and consuming the organs of the hornworm caterpillar, and they consume it as their first meal. So parasitism is obviously negative in the sense that it normally causes the death of an organism, or at the very least, it'll cause an organism to have something not so good. And so uh, tapeworms are a great one. This is the head of a tapeworm called the scolex of the tapeworm. Tapeworms can enter your digestive system and they will begin to, sap nutrients from our intestines and from food that we eat. We can become very sick from these things. A lot of times they will go undetected because, the longer they can keep you alive, the better. So they'll do anything to keep you alive as long as possible, so they can keep taking resources from you. You've probably seen this little guy before, Paris. So Paris gets its name from the word parasite, and so it's actually based on an ant and cordyceps mushrooms. And so you can actually see these are mushrooms bursting out of the ant's back. So mushroom spores infect ants. They slowly eat away at the brain of the ant. And then when the ant dies, the mushrooms burst out of their exoskeleton and release more spores to infect the entire colony. Again, pretty nasty parasite.